They don't obey volume, they obey certainty. They don't respect you because you speak louder. They respect you because you make them listen without needing to raise your voice. Real power doesn't shout. It doesn't explain. It doesn't compete. It whispers and still shifts the room. You walk in. You don't say much. You don't rush to interrupt. You let others fill the space. And slowly they adjust. They lower their voices. They sit straighter. They begin choosing their words more carefully. But you haven't said a thing. Because power isn't in what you say. It's in what your silence makes them say to themselves. There's a difference between being heard and being obeyed. Loud people get heard, but calm people, they get followed. We've been conditioned to associate volume with strength. But the deeper instinct, the one wired into us since childhood, follows the one who speaks less, moves slower, and holds absolute certainty in their tone. It's not dominance. It's not aggression. It's something colder, something cleaner. It's command without effort. And that's what this video is about. How to speak in a way that makes people lean in, not because they're curious, but because they feel something they can't explain. A shift, an internal question, a loop that starts replaying the moment you go quiet. This is invisible influence. This is low-tone command. Now, let's break the illusion wide open and uncover why the quieter you are, the more they follow. Every time you raise your voice to be respected, you send the opposite message. Because your tone is not just sound, it's code. It tells people whether they should follow or challenge, whether you're in control or trying to prove it. When you speak in a low, steady tone, you're not just being calm, you're triggering an ancient response system that says, this person knows exactly what they're doing. End. It's primal, biological. We are wired to respond to composure. Think about it. Children obey the parent who speaks slowly, not the one who screams. Soldiers follow the general who gives short, cold commands never rushed. And in any room, the person who speaks less but with weight sets the emotional rhythm, because low tone equals certainty. And certainty always wins the room. Loudness is an effort to fill space, but calm, low tone is the quiet confidence that you already own it. People don't question you because of what you say. They don't even remember all your words. They remember how your voice made them feel. And that feeling is what shifts their behavior. They slow down. They think twice. They lean in, because something about your tone says, there's more power here than you're seeing. The power isn't loud, it's surgical. It cuts through chaos with stillness. And the beauty is, once you master this tone, you never have to raise your voice again. Because the moment you lower it, they start lowering theirs. Now, let's take it deeper, because your tone is just the beginning. What happens when you say less and let silence do the talking? That's where real control begins. Silence isn't empty, it's loaded, but most people fear it. They rush to fill it, as if the absence of words will cost them the room. They don't realize, whoever controls the silence controls the mind. When you pause, you create a gap, and in that gap, the listener leans in. They start filling in meaning. They replay what you just said. They wonder what's coming next. They loop. Because silence triggers discomfort. Discomfort triggers attention, and attention is influence. Picture this. Someone asks you a direct question. You pose. No expression. No rush. You look at them, breathe, and then say only half a sentence. Then you stop again. They're hooked, not by what you said, but by what you withheld. It wasn't your answer that gripped them. It was the space you left behind. This is what most people never learn. Speaking is only half of communication. The other half is controlled absence. And here's the twist. The less you say, the more your words echo. You don't need to say more to be understood. You need to leave just enough unsaid that their own mind finishes your message exactly how you want it. The secret weapon isn't in your speech. It's in your pauses. It's in your restraint. It's in your ability to stay comfortable in discomfort. And that's how silence becomes the loudest signal in the room. Now imagine combining this silence with unfinished thoughts, open frames, unclosed loops. Let's go deeper into the psychology of how to trap their mind without ever raising your voice. Influence doesn't come from giving people answers. It comes from giving them unfinished sentences and watching them chase the ending in their mind. This is the low-tone loop, and it's one of the most subtle forms of mental capture. You don't tell them what to think. You lead them to the edge and leave the rest hanging. Maybe you already know what needs to happen. Pause. Or maybe you're not ready yet. Then silence. They'll replay that moment again and again because it didn't resolve. And humans are wired to close what's left open. We crave resolution. We crave certainty. So when you deny that, you create gravity. They keep turning your words over, not because you spoke with force, but because you withdrew just before closure. This technique is simple, but powerful. Low tone, minimal words, an incomplete suggestion, then silence. You've just planted a loop, a mental whisper they'll hear long after the conversation ends. You become the thought they can't finish, and that makes you unforgettable, because it's not about what you say, it's about what your silence forces them to say to themselves. In arguments, in seduction, in leadership, the person who speaks in loops controls the mind. They don't fight logic, they guide it through gaps, and those gaps become chambers of influence. Now imagine someone trying to push you, provoke you, demand an answer, and instead of reacting, you leave a sentence mid-air and walk away. They don't win that moment because they're still inside it, while you've already moved on. This is the silent loop, subtle, deadly, undeniable. But what happens when the loop isn't enough? When people start raising their voice to assert control, do you meet them there? Number. You drop lower, and that drop breaks their frame. Let's go there, to the truth about how volume kills authority. Loudness is panic, disguised as authority. People think raising their voice forces compliance, but volume isn't dominance. It's leakage. It's where your insecurity escapes. Because when you feel certain, you don't need to prove it. You don't need to raise anything. You simply hold and watch everything else adjust. The louder they get, the more uncertain they are. And the quieter you remain, the more they reveal their cracks. Volume is effort. Low tone is weight, and weight always wins. Think of the leaders you respect. Not the ones who shouted, but the ones who entered the room and needed only one sentence to shift the temperature. Because when someone speaks low, slow, and still, we don't hear just the words. We hear, this person doesn't need approval. They've already decided. They're not here to perform, they're here to frame. And we fall in line, not because they demanded it, but because they gave us no emotional gap to push against. High tone invites resistance. Low tone creates surrender. And here's the irony. The louder you get, the more invisible you become. You blend into the noise. You become part of the static. But when you speak low, when your voice slices through the room like cold air, People go still because it doesn't feel like opinion. It feels like structure. Now take this understanding and apply it where it matters most. Conflict, arguments, emotional confrontation. How do you hold control when everything around you is screaming for reaction? Let's enter the battleground and uncover how low-tone silence can flip the power in any personal conflict. Power isn't tested when things are calm. It's revealed when tension rises. Anyone can appear composed when no one's pushing them. But the true test is what you do when someone raises their voice, throws accusations, or tries to pull you into their storm. Most people match energy. Volume mates volume. Emotion meets emotion. And in that chaos, no one wins. Only escalation. But the one who controls their tone controls the temperature. Imagine this. Someone's confronting you, accusing you, trying to bait you into explaining, defending, reacting. And you don't flinch. You let them speak. No interruptions, no visible reaction. Then, in a calm, low voice, you say, "I hear you. Pause. I'll let you sit with that." Then you leave. What just happened? You didn't argue. You didn't beg. You didn't play their game. But you did something far more powerful. You reversed the frame. They were expecting a fight. They got silence. They were preparing for resistance. You gave them a mirror. Now they're left in their own echo, their words, bouncing back at them with no noise from you to cover the sound. And that silence, that restraint, that stillness in your voice, it becomes dominance. Not the kind that's loud and theatrical, but the kind that makes people rethink their position, re-question their certainty, and wonder, why didn't he react? Because power doesn't chase noise, it absorbs it. Then choose escaldly what to reflect and what to ignore. Now imagine extending this strategy beyond conflict into every conversation. What if your low tone didn't just diffuse attacks, but framed the entire dialogue? From the very first word, let's step into that territory. The art of shaping interaction without saying much at all. Influence doesn't require long speeches. It requires structure installed before the other person even realizes they're inside it. Most people speak to be understood, but the strategist speaks to frame what can be understood. And here's the twist. You don't have to overstate anything. In fact, the more subtle your language, the more powerful your frame becomes. Low tone, short phrasing, unfinished thoughts. You don't give clarity. You demand interpretation. And people interpret inside the box you gave them. Example, they ask, "Are you okay with this plan?" You pose, tilt your head slightly. Then say softly, "It's interesting." Then nothing. Now their mind is racing. What did you mean? Was that a yes? A no? A warning? They adjust their approach. Not because you gave an answer, but because you gave them uncertainty wrapped in composure. This is invisible framing. When your words are light, but your tone is exact, you create a magnetic ambiguity. They lean in, not because you're loud, but because you made them question something in themselves. Here's the pattern. Ask questions that lead. Answer with phrases that suggest. Speak slow. Speak low. Say less. Then watch how people adjust, clarify, or even backtrack, without you ever pushing them. This is how politicians redirect without lying. How negotiators win terms without threatening. How leaders correct without blame. It's not about volume. It's not about directness. It's about installing a container so subtly that they drink your meaning without ever noticing the shape of the cup. Now imagine combining that subtle container with strategic silence and tone scarcity. You don't just frame the moment, you become rare. And in a world full of noise, rarity becomes value. Let's move there now, to the territory where your words stop being expected and start becoming economically precious. The rarer something is, the more we value it. That's not psychology, that's economics. And the same rule applies to your voice. If you're always available, always explaining, always quick to fill silence, then your words become cheap, predictable, forgettable. But when you speak less, you signal one thing above all. You don't need to be heard, because you already hold the frame. You don't chase clarity. You create weight through absence. Think about the most powerful people in any room. They're not talking constantly. They speak when it matters. They use fewer words. But when they do speak, everyone listens. Because scarcity builds status. In text, fewer replies, shorter answers, more space between messages. In meetings, let everyone talk first. Then you enter last and reshape the conversation with 10 calm words. In relationships, you don't over-explain. You don't fill silence with nervous comfort. You let them wonder, let them reach, let them feel your emotional distance. And in doing so, you become the rare signal in their world of noise. You stop being accessible and start being magnetic. Because here's the truth. Those who speak all the time are consumed. Those who speak selectively are pursued. Scarcity doesn't mean coldness. It means value discipline. It means knowing when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. Now you've seen the entire terrain, the silence, the loops, the structure, the restraint. But none of it matters if you don't practice it. Let's bring it all together now, in one final challenge. The moment where silence becomes your ritual and presence becomes your power. You've seen what happens when you lower your tone. You've watched how silence shifts attention. You've felt how fewer words create deeper gravity. But this isn't theory. It's transformation. And it begins now. For the next 48 hours, speak half as much. Slow your delivery. Lower your tone. And pause twice as long. Don't rush to explain. Don't fill silences. Don't answer right away. Let others chase clarity. Let them stretch toward your stillness. Let them feel the discomfort of not knowing what you're thinking, and realize how magnetic that truly is. In every interaction, ask yourself, does this need to be said, or will silence do more? Because the truth is, most people speak to manage perception, but the powerful, they don't manage anything. They let the room shape itself around them. You don't need to announce your strength. You don't need to defend your position. You don't need to dominate a single word. You just need to hold. Hold your posture. Hold your breath. Hold your tone. And in that restraint, you stop being someone who tries to be heard and become someone who cannot be ignored. So here's your challenge. 48 hours. Minimal speech. Maximum presence. Let the world adjust to your silence, not the other way around. Because, in a world of noise, the one who speaks last almost never needs to speak at all.